lecture in our anthropology series. So today we had completed the culture personality school. Today we are going to start with neo-evolutionism. Now if you remember a little bit, the first topic in anthropological theories were the evolutionist school, but the only difference was that they were classical evolutionists, and these are neo-evolutionists. Now you can from the term itself understand that okay, so they are also evolutionists only. That means a lot of the things, including the basic premise and all of that, is going to be the same for both classicals and new. But the only difference is neo evolutionist school came came in support of classical evolutionists because they believed in the premise of classical evolutionist. Okay, so basically they were also interested in the diachronic study. That means अभी हमने क्या किया था, from functionalism and onwards a debate had started कि whether to study the cultures or society in a synchronic manner. That means what we have here and now, that is the study of the present, or we should go back, trace the evolution of cultures in society, which was basically done by both evolutionists and diffusionists. They were doing some kind of diachronic studies, but with functionalism, right, the synchronized study of the culture and society started. That means study of cultures here and now, and after that many were doing the studies in a synchronic manner in the dearth of data that was there for that was not there for diachronic study. Because if you have to trace the path of evolution, or you have to trace the history of something, you need to have scientific evidence, or you can say or rather not say scientific, but you need to have evidence for that, right? You need evidence, and that was the whole thing which was, you know, functionalists were saying this thing only, that in the dearth of data, when you don't have data, it's not feasible to go back and do the diachronic studies. So basically new evolutionists came in and they said, okay, the premise on which the classical evolutionists based their theory was, it made sense, though they were conjecturalists. So new evolutionists' third premise was that we will not do any conjecturalism. That means our theory would be based on facts and findings and evidences and fieldwork. So they tried to support the data or support the basic premise, which was largely borrowed, or you can say which was largely what classical evolutionists also believed. They stood firm on that premise only, but they added that we will not do any conjecturalism. That means the criticism what basically cultural evolutionists got, they tried to plug in those gaps and come up with a theory which was a lot more acceptable in that modern times, right? So this is one thing. So I hope you have got now the background of the school. So now this person is V.GChilde, and this person is Leslie White, and then we have Julian Stewart. These are the three people that we are going to study in this school. But today we are going to do the background and premise of this school, and we'll complete V.GChilde, and tomorrow we'll do the next part, right? So the background of this school was that by late 1930s, classicals and functionalists, even classicals, functionalists, diffusionists, they all came under heavy criticism, right? Of course, everybody, even their theories were not full-fledged. We had seen the whole criticism, right? Now if anybody is watching my video for the first time, you will not be able to understand this if you do not go through evolutionism, diffusionism, functionalism. So you need to go back, watch those videos and come back to this one, right? So Now they had come under heavy criticism, and then even these people, that is Gordon Childe and Leslie White or Julian Stewart, they were interested in the diachronic study. That means study of the past, or looking at the history of cultures or society. So they were interested in that. Okay? And even they believed that evolution was a gradual process from simple to complex, from homogeneous to heterogeneous, and uncertainty to certainty. Now this part I have explained very nicely in the classical evolutionist topic, so please go back, watch this. Anthropological theories का first topic है, right? Go back, because the basic premise of this school would be taken from the classical evolutionists only. So they also believe that evolution is a gradual process. That means it happens very slowly. From a fairly simplistic society to a more complex or modern society, the evolution happens. That means सिंपल सोसाइटी में क्या होता है, होमोजेनिटी होती है, एवरीबडी इज डूइंग द सेम काइंड ऑफ थिंग, देयर इज नो स्ट्रैटिफिकेशन, देयर इज egalitarianism. But when the society start becoming complex, these there are hierarchies built, stratification happens. So that is how the homogeneous societies transform into heterogeneous societies. And evolution is a never ending process. That means even if today we have a modern society, it's not that this is the apex like what Morgan believed, right? Civilization he called as the apex, right? Apex stage. But of course civilization could be the apex stage, but then even certain new characters, new very modern characters can come up, right? So evolution is a never ending process, and they were interested in tracing the origin and sequence of evolution. That means how societies or cultures evolved, from where they came up. So all these were also the basic premise on which their theory was built. Okay, so I hope I have made the point clear how they came up. But now the approach is going to be a little different. Though the premises of the school was exactly similar, or they believed in the same points, they did not think that the theoretical part of classical evolutionists were bad, or they believed that the theoretical part or the theory which classical evolutionists gave, it made sense to them. But then they said, because they were so conjecturalist, or they did not do any field work, or their criticism was that they were armchair anthropologists, so they tried to plug in those gaps. So approach is going to be different. Okay, premise is the same. They believed in the theoretical aspect of the classical evolutionists, but the approach they did not believe in, right? So they said ki we will not do any speculation. That means their theory will be based on facts and evidences. They focused only on material culture. Now this is very important. They focused only on material culture because they thought that non-material culture non-material culture, it is, again, as we say, what is non-material culture? It is the values, the beliefs, the norms, and it is the ideological part. And ideological part is a lot, you can say, part of the psyche or psychology, or it is something which is not open for scientific evidences and findings, right? So they thought, let us not study this part, because if we study this part, then conjecturalism will come in, then speculation will come in, and then our theory will be not based on facts and evidences. So that is why they focused only on the material culture as in artifacts, or the things that are visible to us, the visible part of the culture, right? So they focused on that, so that their theory is scientific and they do not do any conjecturalism, right? So this was an approach mein there was a shift, right? And then they even regarded diffusion as one means of cultural change. This was also one thing which was ahead of classical evolutionists, because diffusionism का criticism ही ये था to classical evolutionism, that they didn't talk about diffusion as a means of change in the culture, right? They only said evolution will happen, but But new evolutionism, they took into account that also diffusion can be a means of cultural change. So I hope I've made the points clear. There is no confusion in this. So now let's start with the V.G.Childe. Okay, now V.G.Childe was an Australian archaeologist. Okay, so he was basically an archaeologist. So a lot of archaeological findings he used to support his theory. ठीक है, तो theory तो was more or less same, evolution की theory थी, cultural evolution की theory थी. That means the culture's progress from being savage to being barbaric to being civilized. This was what was said by classical evolutionists. This was even believed by Gordon V.G.Childe also. Sorry, Gordon Childe also, right? So the theory is the same, that cultural evolution will happen. It will go from stage of savagery to barbarism to civilization. This is a gradual process, and all of that is the same. But the difference is that he was not an armchair anthropologist. He used a lot of his archaeological findings to support this theory, right? So there are two important books that he had written. One is Man Makes Himself, and the second one is Social Evolution, in which he has given this whole theory what we are going to study now, right? He did large number of excavations, and his excavations were, you can say the basic place where he worked was Middle East, Europe, some part of Asia also. So these were the core areas where he worked, and he used the archaeological time scale to show evolution. Now don't worry about this, let me try and make you understand. But before this, let's go to this slide and see. Yes, let's see this first, and I'll take you back to the whole theory after that. So basically I've told you the research work was done in Europe and some parts of Middle East, etc., and he was highly influenced by Darwin. Okay, the theory of Darwin. ठीक है, evolution as we know, it's a biological term, right? Biological term है, and we use it when we study Darwin and those theories. So the term eventually starting में तो it came from biological perspective only, right, which was taken by E.B. Taylor and Morgan, and then they tried to show that evolution is not only biological but also cultural. So this is all I have told you in the classical evolutionist chapter. Guys, please go back, watch those videos if you are not understanding, because you need to have those topics in mind, right? So coming back to this, Darwin ने evolution की बात की थी, but that was biological evolution. But then E.B. Taylor, Morgan came and they said no, cultural evolution भी होती है, right? From where even Gordon V.G.Childe, sorry, I'm again saying Gordon V.G.Childe, it's V.G.Childe. He also took up the idea of cultural evolution from the classical evolutionists, that is Taylor, Morgan, all of those people. But he was also very influenced by Darwin. So how he used his methodology, we'll see that. ठीक है, so his methodology is also known as Darwinian methodology or materialistic methodology. Materialistic because mostly focusing on material aspect of the culture. So now what Darwin said was कि there'll be variation, of course, that genetic changes keep on happening in the gene frequency keeps on changing, and the one which is more adapted or survival of the fittest, right? So जो adapt करेगा, they will get selected by the nature and they will survive. But Childe ने इसको culture में कैसे use किया? How Childe used it in culture? He said that with time discoveries and innovations will happen. Okay, these discoveries and innovation will keep the human culture evolving. So innovation and discovery will keep the culture evolving. ठीक है? So this is, he focused on his genetic efficiency. That means gene frequency will change. People with higher or superior genes will survive because they will get better adapted in those harsh environments. And what Gordon Childe said, that discoveries and innovations will happen, and whatever technology is best suited in those times or culture, in those cultural environment, technological efficiency will make them evolve and survive. So see, you can see how, he used the Darwin का biological evolution का theory into cultural evolution. So then he talked about increase in population, and he talked about how progression into next stages will happen. So a little bit methodology I think I've told you. Now what he did, what he actually came up with, I'll just tell you that. Okay, so let's draw this table, because you need this table. um, yes, we'll write here Paleolithic, this is Neolithic, and this is Bronze Age. Okay, let me make a chart of this, because that's important. Let me draw it like that. Okay, now I'll write here technology, and here I'll write economy. Okay, so now in Paleolithic, the technology, it was the stone pebble tools. They were crude, they were large in size, right? The tool technology was mostly stone tools. They were crude, large, and waterborne. ठीक है, ज़्यादा there was no, you can say, there were no large variety of tools, very basic tools, and this was the technology that they were having. And economy was hunting, gathering. Okay, let's change the color. Okay, economy we'll do after this. First, let us do the technology first. Okay, so in Neolithic, the tools, even though they were stone tools, and at many places some metal tools also came in, some metal tools, but tools were now polished. They were smaller and sharper, right? So you can say this, they were smaller and sharper. And then bronze iron kar lo yaar isko, this is bronze and iron age, right? So now the only metal, of course the stone tools were there, but largely technology was metal tools. ठीक है, a lot of diversity in the tools. ठीक है, they had more strength, right? ठीक है, so technology we can say this much, right? Now let us go to the economy. Economy here was hunting and gathering. Okay, let me just do one thing. Okay, yeah, technology I am writing here, right? So technology was hunting and gathering. Society was a lot egalitarian, with no stratification, simple people. ठीक है, so hunting and gathering, they were egalitarian. All of this you know. Neolithic में you can say agriculture and settled communities came in. Settled communities with surplus, right? With stratification. And then there was domestication of animals also, right? Domestication of animals, right? Just add that also. Domestication of plants and animals, तो agriculture में आ गया. Bronze age में you will say there was script, ठीक है? There was trade and commerce that was flourishing. Trade and commerce came. Then societies became a large bigger. ठीक है, so they were large societies, and then all of that science, after science also came in. So यहाँ पे बहुत कुछ आ गया, right? All of this now how with this he basically gave the theory थ्योरी क्या है? द ट्रांजिशन फ्रॉम being savage to barbaric to civilized, right? Civilized, right? And this is the archaeological time scale, you can say, right? Because ये paleolithic, neolithic, bronze age, ये ये classifications we have done based on the dominant tool technology, right? Lithic is tool, sorry, stone, right? So this is what we have done. सोसाइटल या कल्चरल बेसिस पे हमने क्लासिफिकेशन की हुई है. सो व्हाट ही यूज द आर्कियोलॉजिकल टाइम स्केल और द कल्चरल टाइम स्केल विच वॉज बेस्ड ऑन द डोमिनेंट टूल टेक्नोलॉजी और द टेक्नोलॉजी एट लार्ज. उसको इन्होंने यूज करके बताया सेवेजरी, बार्बरिज्म एंड सिविलाइजेशन. सो पेलियोलिथिक को ही कैटेगराइज्ड एज सेवेजरी, नियोलिथिक वॉज समवेयर अराउंड बार्बरिज्म का टाइम, एंड देन Bronze Iron Age, he said that it was the civilization. So now you understand how he used archaeological time scale and technology as the basis for his definition, how he defined the evolution from savagery to being barbaric to being civilized. He used technology as basis and the archaeological time scale. How Paleolithic, Neolithic, Bronze, Iron Age people he defined in different categories as being savage, being barbaric and being civilized. So this was the whole story. You can take a screenshot of this. I'll go back to the picture, right? So now Bronze Age was related to civilization. So he said Bronze Age was the civilized period. He used the archaeological time scale to show evolution, we have seen that, and he gave a very universal evolution concept. So this is very important. He gave a universal evolution ka concept, because he was not talking about any particular culture. He was talking about the universal evolution. This is very generic, guys, right? When we were studying the whole evolutionary things, the scheme of things, how human evolved and all of that, how its culture evolved, this is just that. This is not, we are not talking about Middle East, we are not talking about Europe, we are just talking about the pan-human society, right? So it was a very universal concept. And then wo Neolithic revolution, the term was also coined by him, because he said that in Neolithic, with the advent of agriculture, there were so many other changes that happened. So that is why that term is called Neolithic revolution. That's not very required here. I just put it in the V.GChilde because he only had coined the term Neolithic revolution. So leave that. But I hope you have understood this part, right? So he gave a very universal evolution ka concept. I even write it here. He gave a universal evolution ka concept, right? So this was his universal evolution, that was savage, how the human society at large transitioned from being savage, barbaric and civilized, and for that he used technology and the time scale, archaeological time scale as its basic premise, right? So now let's look at the criticism. The criticism, some things which you can also borrow from the classical evolutionists is the ethnocentric terms. That means abhi bhi we are using the terms barbaric, savage. It's not good, right? Classifying something as savage, barbaric, civilization is very like it's beyond the human dignity, right? You are compromising somebody's dignity when you're using such ethnocentric terms. So that was clearly there, right? Then he applied the sequence of development of Middle East and Europe to the rest of the world. Now what is this? Basically he worked in Middle East mostly, right? Middle East and Europe. So whatever archaeological findings he had of that area, he applied it to the universal phenomena. So that was wrong. क्योंकि you have not collected the data for the whole world, but then you are giving theories that are like pan world. So that is wrong. That would be a criticism. Then he relied too much on archaeological data to show cultural evolution. Now what is this? Because एक तो क्लियरली नॉन मटेरियल एस्पेक्ट तो बाहर ही हो गया था कल्चर का. सो that is a big criticism, that you are not taking the non material aspect, which is for many people the soul, the core of, you know, any culture. Like culture personality school, they were mostly focusing on the non material aspect only, right? They were calling it as the core. So you're you know, if even if it is not the core or not the only thing that is there, but of course it's a big part of culture, right? So how can you ignore such a big part of a culture or big part of culture and then giving a theory? ठीक है. So again this is a criticism. Then he used only the archaeological data because he was an archaeologist, so he used only that data to give a theory and he did not look at any other perspectives. ठीक है. Any other thing beyond that he didn't look. ठीक है. So only those findings, only those things he used. ठीक है. So non material culture aspect ignored है. Then he talked about universal and he talked about diachronic studies. That means how culture must have evolved its sequence from being savage to barbaric to civilized. But what about the tribes that are today? वैसे तो tribe भी बहुत ethnocentric है, but now we use these terms only, so we should not use these terms, but ठीक है. जैसे कि today there are tribes, they don't fit in even if you call today as civilization, right? Because bronze age के बाद तो उनके हिसाब से civilization had come in, but even till today there are tribes that live, you can say, naked. They have very subsistent technology. ठीक है. They are shy from the world. ठीक है ना. There are Maasai, there are so many tribes, right? There are tribes in Andaman who lived like that, right? So what about them? How are you going to then say that we are living in a civilization? Because even today there is so much of diversity. Even today there is primitive promiscuity many places. Even today there is matriarchal societies, which clearly was not the idea in civilization. So you cannot you know, give a pan world theory right now. ठीक है. So he didn't look at those aspects, and his theory was very, you know, highly reliant on technology and energy. Basically what he is trying to say, that in each phase, that is from moving from paleolithic to neolithic and from neolithic to bronze age and then succeeding ages, you are going to have a technology, and based you know, you are going to have a technology, and with advancement in technology you are going to become from savage to barbaric to civilized. And this technology, for this technology you need energy. So as much energy you harness, that means आपके पास, जैसे if you eat food that gives you energy, ठीक है. You'll eat food and then you'll work, right? If you don't get food, you will not be able to work, right? And जितना rich food खाओगे, that much energy you're going to get. For example, if there is a person who barely gets any calories a day, he would not be able to work as efficiently as a person who is, you know, who gets better calories or फुलफिलिंग कैलोरीज, राइट? जिनका फूड अच्छा है. तो ऑब्वियसली एक पुअर पर्सन और रिच पर्सन में से बेटर एफिशिएंसी किसका होगा? जो थोड़ा सा रिच है, बिकॉज ही हैज गुड फूड, राइट? सो एनर्जी क्या है? एनर्जी दैट ओनली विच यू हार्नेस फ्रॉम द नेचर. सो जैसे जैसे यू नो फ्रॉम आपकी एनर्जी बढ़ती जाएगी, दैट मीन्स आपकी कैलोरिफिक वैल्यू ऑफ फूड बढ़ेगी, यू नो, विद टेक्नोलॉजी एनर्जी को हार्नेस करेगा और एनर्जी फर्दर टेक्नोलॉजी को हार्नेस करेगी. ये दोनों एक दूसरे को हार्नेस करेंगे. यू विल गेट फूड, यू विल थिंक, यू विल develop certain technology, and that technology will help you get more food, and then that virtuous cycle will go on. ठीक है. So his theory was based on कि जितना energy increase होएगा, technological advancement होएगा, and then you will transition from savagery to barbarism to civilization. But this theory was very like lopsided, you can say, because his theory was only reliant on the relationship between technology and energy. ठीक है. So the theory was very like skewed in that way because it was only focusing on technology and energy. And based on that, you cannot describe any society as being inferior or superior just because you have a tool technology that can harness more energy, more food. This is not the way you uh, say that a culture is superior or inferior, right? So this was all about V.GChilde. I hope I've made my points clear. And guys, any doubts, please post in the comment section below. I will be happy to answer you. Tomorrow we will start with the Leslie White, right? So I hope you guys liked the lecture. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.